Now, I'm delighted joined by former Limerick footballer Pa Ranahan to look back on Limerick's epic win over Clare in the Munster quarter-final and look forward to this weekend's semi-final against Tipperary. I suppose, Pa, you were in Ennis as a former player. If you were on the field, would you be one stepping up to take a penalty or would you be ushering the forwards?
You'd love to say that you would, but it's a highly pressurized situation, like so. But yeah, you don't know until you're in it, because it's like anything. If you're playing well in a match, then you generally want these things. You want the ball. You're like, give me this. I'll do it. I'll take it. And if you're not, then you're kind of hiding behind people and hoping that the manager doesn't look your direction and ask you, because it's a very hard thing to say no to when you're being asked. To put your hand up and say it, and then for it to kind of match up with Billy was saying afterwards, that the five lads that he'd penciled in were also the five lads who put their hands up to take it. And no more than anyone else in the crowd, there was quite a big gap between the match finishing and the penalty shootout. I'd say a lot of even officials were like, okay, we want to make sure everything is done properly here. It's the first time it's been done. So there was quite a long break, but we were kind of chatting among ourselves. I was with dear McCarroll watching, and my mother and the two kids, and we were just wondering who would take it. And kind of we'd picked 3 or 4 of them, just from different sports. I suppose Ian being the main penalty taker, Brian Donovan having his spell in America, I think, with a soccer scholarship. So we're like looking for the soccer players. Of course, Robbie worked in from the rugby background and kicking the frees. We would say him as well. Peter Nash played junior soccer in town for regional, I think, for a while. And then James was kind of the other one. And the lads, in the WhatsApp groups, they were like, okay, he has played soccer with Shannonside. So you were kind of looking at those lads, and then afterwards it was funny to see the different coloured boots that the lads were wearing. So that's usually a good sign of a fella that is confident enough in his kicking. So look, there was kind of an air of calm once we saw the 5 kickers coming up. It was like, okay, we have a chance here, because we definitely felt that the 5 that were going up were the right 5, and it turned out that way.
For those that weren't there, was there a difference in the aura in the Limerick players walking up to take penalties as opposed to the Clare players? Could you sense that difference?
Yeah, I suppose when you're watching it, well, it's so long you could watch anything you wanted, but I was only really looking at the Limerick lads to see, and there was such a calmness about it. Like, and I know there's pictures afterwards, and you see Peter Nash laughing, but the body language of them was definitely of a group that felt confident, that they were like, okay, well, I know this is a highly pressurized situation, but their body language just looked like a group that were like, okay, we're ready for this. And then the flip side of that, then you've got your goalkeepers like Donald O'Sullivan. He's a big man inside the goals. Like, if you're a penalty taker walking up from Clare, and even him standing there, he's nearly touching the crossbar as it is, and he's covering a lot of the goals. And the Clare goalkeeper on the night, I think it was his first championship match. How many penalties would he have faced? He wasn't as big. Now, the penalties from Limerick were struck very well. Even if he'd got the right side, I wonder would he have saved them. But there was definitely kind of an element of, okay, Limerick have the players on the field now at this minute that you'd want for the penalty shootout. Clare might not. I know David Tubridy wasn't. Keelan Sexton obviously didn't play, and he'd be a penalty taker. And Gavin Cooney, I think, at that stage was gone. So there was definitely a bit of confidence around the place, as much as you can be confident in a penalty shootout. But I think when Ian Corbett scored that first one, it's funny because often it's a team going first. When you're going second and the team first scores, like, every penalty thereafter for the second team is tough, and that's the way it turned out.
And I suppose the game overall, I want to get into in depth, but just for quickly, penalties as a means of deciding the game. I know we have a condensed nature. Do you think that's the fairest way if it wasn't going to go to a replay, or would you think you keep going, or maybe kick out of your hands, or what would you think is the fairest way to decide a game?
You're kind of biased by how it finishes normally. So if you don't win, like Munster Rugby this week, now would probably be saying, was there a better way to finish that match at the weekend, given that you're on the losing side? Look, what do you do is the thing. Do you keep playing until you, like, I remember once upon a time when we first played McGrath Cup, when I did in 2007 or 8, we played extra time, 10 minutes each side. It was a draw against Tipperary over in Clare. We played another 5 minutes after that of extra time. So do you keep going? Do you do a golden score? Do you do penalties? Do you do frees out of the hands? Like, whatever you do is going to cause hassle some way, I will say. Now, it's very harsh to get knocked out in that way. I suppose with the condensed season, they have to finish matches on the day. Like, if you just offered the teams a replay, I don't even know if they'd have taken it, because you'd have been out this weekend and then you'd have been out again next weekend. So it'd be 3 weekends in a row for the winner. So that's not ideal either. So it's harsh. Look, for the supporter watching, and it was funny watching because we were in the middle of the stand, we'll say the terrace stand on the opposite side. And all the kids ran from one goals all the way down to the other goals because it was obvious where the penalties were going to be taken. So there was a real pageantry about the whole thing. I think penalties, I'd say it went around Twitter and social media like wildfire that there was this GA match that went to penalties, and everyone get try and watch it in any way you can. There was a lot of streams going on from behind the terrace from different angles. So it does capture the imagination of the public. It is a harsh way of finishing a match, especially a GA match, as someone said. If you're that player who misses and you have to go into work the following day, it's grand if you're a professional, you can kind of hide away, go on holidays for a week, 2 weeks. But if you're that player who misses and you have to go back in and to work the Monday or Tuesday afterwards, it's a lot to ask. So look, it's half a dozen one, it's what way to do it. But as a person watching, it was definitely enjoyable.
The game itself, I suppose Clare, as the seasoned Division 2 team against Limerick, who will be Division 2 next year, probably started a bit stronger. But how impressed were you with Limerick's, I suppose, middle third in the first half, with Brian Fanning's goal and a couple of points in a row, that they showed that we are a Division 2 team and we're here to stay kind of a job?
Yeah, I suppose UC West about the penalties, and there was an air of calm about Limerick in the penalties. There's definitely an air of calm about their play generally when things are going well or not well during the match. Like, they just have that bit of maturity about them now. You're looking at them, there's no panic. And certainly in the first quarter, both teams were very cagey, very, very cagey. Clare were giving up the kickouts to Limerick and trying to stop in midfield, and that was working for a while. But then, as you said, Limerick found a way to work that around. They hit a purple patch, we'll say, about 20-25 minutes into the game. They reeled off about 1-2 in a row, 1-3 in a row, and found themselves 5 points up. And you're like, okay, this is really strong position now for them. Sloppy penalty then just before half-time, and a big score actually was after the penalty. There was 2 points in it, and Limerick kept the ball for about 3 minutes and worked a free, which Josh Ryan kicked over. So even though they conceded a goal, they went into the half-time break with that kind of fill-up of just scoring a point as well. So they're 3 points up. But you were looking, saying, okay, Clare will have their purple patch yet. And it happened for a lot of the second half. Clare were the dominant team, and you were like, okay, can Limerick hold on? Clare were kicking a few wides. Limerick had to make a few changes and use their bench. But there was definitely, the momentum was with Clare, and as it came down the straight, you were just hoping that they could hold the lead. When Clare equalised, you were hoping, okay, can we find the winner here? And then when Jamie Malone kicked that point in the 4th or 5th minute of injury time, you really thought the gig was up. And to be fair, Limerick really showed their mettle at that stage. They won the next kick out. They didn't try to force it in like so many teams would into the full forward line. They kept possession. They waited for the opportunity. Hugh Burke get the right man on the ball, won his free, and then Robbie, like he's a really good free taker, to be fair to him. So like, while it was a big pressurized moment, so you get the impression he doesn't feel it. He's a nice kicking style from the rugby, like it's nice and short run up, and his striking was very good, and he kicked that over. But even still in the crowd, Jack, when it went over, as much as you delighted you were like, how are Limerick going to turn this around extra time? Because Clare had all the play in the second half, really. And it started that way in extra time. Clare were on top, had the 2 point lead coming up to half time in extra time. And again, no panic. Limerick won a kick out short, worked it up the field. Peter Nash made a bad ball into a good ball. And Cillian Fahey, who had an outstanding game, found Brian Donovan, made the right decision, drew the defender in, and Robbie Burke again got the goal. And you were like, oh, massive score. You just feel like the energy, you could see the energy around the place lifting on the players. And again, it's funny, Limerick are the team then in the second half of extra time that were just dominant. And when Peter Nash kicked the score to put Limerick up 2, you just felt that's it now. There's no way Clare are going to get 2 scores in the time that's left. But they did, because they are a good Division 2 team as well, and they didn't panic, and they got their free and they kicked it over. And so it was just one of those games where both teams had their real purple patches, but the other team was still able to go, okay, we'll take that punch and we'll try and hit back now. And they did invariably. So it was a very even match. Like, Clare will probably look back at the chances they missed, but Limerick will look back saying we had a 5 point lead in the first half. And the penalty, as it was shown at the time, it didn't look like it was in the square, and it was shown afterwards it wasn't. So, like, that was a contentious enough one. That gave Clare a lifeline the first half to bring him back into it. So, look, Conor Lane had a really good game, I thought, as a referee. But the match itself, it probably was fair in some ways that it was decided on penalties because the two teams were so evenly matched through it. And it augurs well for Limerick going forward for next year when you're playing a team like Clare who've spent 6 years in Division 2 and you're able to compete like head on with them like that and come out on top.
Yeah, look, I only saw the highlights of the game, obviously not being able to go, but Limerick seem to be able to attack in varying different ways. Like Brian Fanning's goal is a solo goal. Robbie Burke's one is a quick, I suppose, counter-attack. But that Robbie Burke free then, as you said, was played slowly through the line. So it's kind of like a total football from Limerick. It doesn't really matter who has it. You're kind of confident that they'll make the right decision. If a ball is on, they'll give it. If it's not, they're well able to recycle the ball. And it's good football, but it's very clever all the same.
Yeah, and it's kind of continuation of what they've been doing in the league, to be fair. Like, I would have seen all their league matches, and they're really able to mix it. Like you said, they're able to run it through the lines. They have very athletic players. They have players who are comfortable on the ball. And then you have the likes of Josh inside and the full forward line who offers a very good target at times. So they can, if defences do push out to try and stop the running game, then they're able to kick it into the full forward line. If they drop off to the full back line, Limerick are quite comfortable running the ball. Like, so, look, it's very important that you have that because as you go up the ladder, teams get, like they say in NFL, they get tape on you. Like, they're able to see what you're doing. So I've no doubt teams are starting to look at what Limerick are doing. And if you're just doing the same thing, no matter any team, if you're doing the same thing the whole time, it's very easy to plan for it. Whereas if you have different strings to your bow and different ways to play, like, you have to watch, you have to respect the fact that Limerick can kick it. You have to respect the fact that they can run it. So it's hard to match up to that. Like, so look, it's a great thing to have. You said scores. I think there was 9 different scores the last day against Clare. Throughout the league, that had tended to be the case. There was scores coming from all over the place. Like, it's great to see your full back going up the field and getting a goal. It's worth more than the 3 points, really, because now the forward is having to watch you. The rest of the team are going, well, that's a goal we probably didn't expect we were going to get from that area. And it's just a massive boost. And to be fair to Brian, all day long he was making those runs up the field, creating like bursts. He was moving the ball forward, and Cillian Fahey the same. And it's great to have so many different ways to attack. Like, literally they can attack from their full back line now, which is exceptional, really.
And I suppose it kind of went under the radar because of the penalties, that it was a 4th successive year for Limerick winning in Munster after going 7 years without one, and also a 4th successive semi-final. But the graph, Billy Lee's graph, is trending upwards. It's kind of coming to a time now where you kind of have to win a Munster semi-final. Obviously, losing to Cork, then Tip, then Cork again. You're presented with Tip. It's not going to be easy, but this is a game where you're a division ahead of them for next year, that you're saying we need to win this game and get to a first Munster final, which will be 12 years this year since your team got there.
Yeah, I suppose if you're looking at kind of ticking the boxes for the lads and Billy and all the selectors, like, they've ticked every box so far. They're probably taking them a lot sooner than a lot of people expect them to be ticked. I suppose the very first box to tick was to get competitive, and that did take a few years and to keep the panel together, and they managed to tick that eventually. And then since then, it's been promotion from Division 4, which was a massive thing because people don't understand how tough that is to get out of that division because everyone's fighting so hard. Then to hold on to Division 3 last year in such a short, different type of season where you were like, okay, will Limerick even get the benefit of playing in Division 3 because of the groups being split to North and South? And they did. And then they got the championship win against Waterford, and probably, look, things didn't turn out against Cork last year. Losing Donal so early on with the goal going into the same time was a bit of a disaster and probably didn't really turn up on the day performance-wise. And then this year have just absolutely kicked on again with getting promoted in Division 3. I do think they'd have said consolidate this year again, get another year Division 3, but getting up to Division 2, massive. But there's that one box, I suppose, left of getting to a Munster final. Whatever a Munster final brings at the end of it, look, that's another day's work, and anyone will tell you, look, that's its own thing. But getting there is the thing. And you're right, getting 2 championship wins in a row is a box that needs to be ticked. And no better time to do it than a Munster semi-final with the carrot of a Munster final afterwards. I suppose that's the goal. How they get there is keep doing what they've been doing. You know, they don't need to change too much. Tipperary I'm sure will be quite happy. They won't say it publicly, but they'll be quite happy that Limerick were the ones that came out of Cusack Park with the win. I don't think they'd fancied going to Cusack Park. They're probably looking after, once they had beaten Waterford, checking the penalties are probably still ongoing at that stage. They might have been trying to see the score, but I think they'd have been quite happy that Limerick won that match and having to travel to Thurles to play Limerick instead of Clare. So Tipperary have had their mixed bag this year, but getting out of Division 4, they've been building the whole time. And getting out of Division 4 at one stage looked a lost cause after early lost against Leitrim heavily. And they drew with Waterford early on. And they were probably a bit lucky to beat Wexford down in Wexford Park. They got 4 goals the same day. But saying that, they are a team who could quite easily rock up and get 3 or 4 goals in the game. Like, they have super footballers across the field. And to be honest, they have players back now that they didn't have at the start of the league. And they will be a formidable opponent on Saturday evening.
Yeah, we saw how competitive Cavan were against Donegal, and obviously Tipperary led the league final against Cavan for much of that. So they are a strong team. How much will Limerick take from the 2019 win in Thurles? There's probably 10 or 11 players that start that day that more likely start this Saturday, that they know, I suppose, how to win in Thurles. And I suppose, is winning in a stadium, do you carry that on with you, or is it just from year to year?
I think you do. I think you definitely do. There's certain places that I hate going into, I dislike, because you just have bad memories of it the whole time. And then there's places, like you said, like Thurles, the last time the lads were there, might have been the only time a lot of them were there, that they had a win out of it. And a win that came out of nowhere really that year. It was probably another spark that team got to cause them to kind of give them the belief to try and drive on in 2019. But it's kind of funny because the last time Limerick Tip played, of course, was that 2020 when Conor Sweeney kicked that late equaliser. That was in the Gaelic grounds. Tip won that. The previous time was in Thurles. Limerick won that. The previous time was in the Gaelic grounds. Tip won that. And the previous time was, I think it was back in 2009 when we were playing, and we won that. Like, so it's working out the opposite way. It'd be great if it continues to that vein now that Limerick get to win in Thurles, but unfortunately it doesn't ever really work like that. But so I don't think the stadium has a massive thing to do with it, because look, with the 2 teams involved, you're not going to have 30,000 people there. So the home advantage of the crowd, you'd hope as many Limerick people will travel to Thurles on Saturday evening as there will be Limerick Tipperary people. It's a fantastic surface to play on. You'd love to play in it because it's such the dressing rooms are class there. Everything about the place just kind of feeds into enjoying your football. They'll probably have to park all that. The 2019 win, yes, there will be 10 lads, 11 lads involved, and they will have good memories of it. The flip side, will there be 10 or 11 Tip lads involved? Maybe not as many. There might be 6 or 7, and they'd have a bit of hurt over it. You'd hope Limerick would have still have that itch from 2020 of that game in the Gaelic grounds where they had it won on a couple of occasions, and you saw what happened to Tipperary afterwards when going on to win Munster. And yeah, you'd hope you still have that bit of hurt. That Limerick aren't satisfied with getting a massive championship win over Clare. And I'm sure they are. They've been planning for Tipperary, I'd say, from Monday morning after the Clare game, and what strengths Tipperary have, and they have a lot of them. They're quite a big team. The 2 Kennedys around the middle, Martin Keogh, they've Conor Sweeney, of course, in the forwards. Mikey O'Shea scoring. Sean O'Connor's a big man. They're quite a big team. Like, so I don't know in that respect, do Limerick match up very well against them. Limerick have a couple of big lads, but they're more athletic around the field, and it'll be an interesting battle between 2 different styles, I'd say, because like that, Tipperary have the bit of size. They have good footballers, very good footballers. Mark Russell, who was probably man of the match in the league final, didn't play the last day against Waterford. I think he's due to be back this weekend. Robbie Kiley, who didn't play against Waterford, even though he was named, will more than likely start this weekend. So it's a real 50-50 one. Tipperary are the team that they are now versus the team they were at the start of the league. I know David Power at the time was saying that they were struggling and they were in transition. Maybe they were at that time, but they certainly now will be eyeing up at another Munster final appearance.
And if you're in the Limerick camp, are you saying we're the Division 2 team for next year? We're going to go out and try and stamp our authority straight away, or is it kind of do you go out and be a cagey affair? And as you said, they can get goals. So do you just say, we'll keep it tight at the back? How would you approach it?
Well, if you're going on the last day, I suppose they were playing a Clare team who were a seasoned Division 2 team. So there was a caginess at the start. There was a case of, okay, Clare are going to be in Cusack Park. They're going to try and stamp their authority early on. Let's make sure we take the sting out of it, and that's what they did. The next day, who knows? If it was me, I suppose go out and have that confidence. Like they talk about belief the whole time, and you can talk about having belief. Like belief comes from performances and results. If Limerick don't have belief at the back of what they've done in the league, going to the places they've won, like their away record is unbelievable in the league. They've won in Antrim, they won in Wicklow, they went to Cusack Park and won that game. They went above in Portlaoise when it was relegation and promotion. We're still on the table in the league, and they won that game. So travelling for Limerick they seem to be this kind of team that embraces it. Some teams don't like going away from home, but they seem to be a team that's embracing it. And I do think they should go into the game with confidence, because they'll be playing a Tip team who are confident that they will beat Limerick. So why not go in and match it and say, look, we're the team on the up here. We've shown that we've gone to places and win. We've been here not that long ago and won. Of course, it'll be very tough. And all these plans that David Power and Billy Lee and Maurice Horan will have, you don't know what's going to happen. But I definitely think it's a day for kind of just going out and putting on show what they've done so far, which is very good performances, back themselves to play either way that they want, get the ball into the full forward line if they want quickly and go for it, or run a game and go for it. But look, I suppose it's a classic. It's all on the night what happens. But definitely travel with confidence. Like after the last night, given where they came back from 2 points down in the first half of extra time, and to be able to turn that around, even if Limerick are down 2 or 3 points early on against Tip, I think they're the type of team at the minute that won't panic and will believe that they have it in them to come out on the right side.
And if you did have to call it?
If I did have to call it, if I had to call it, well, I can see both. I can definitely see both. If you'd have said 2 months ago, would Limerick have beaten Clare, I wouldn't have said they would have beaten Clare. People are asking the week before the Clare match, and I was like 50-50 as far as I'm concerned, because of where they are at the minute. If you asked 2 months ago, would Limerick have beaten Tip, I'd have said definitely Limerick had beaten Tip. But now, going into Saturday night, given the players that Tipperary have back, it's 50-50 because they have big players. The kick-out would be a big thing. If Limerick can get enough possession in the game, I think they will win the game. And that'll come down like a lot of football matches to kick-outs. Tipperary have quite a big midfield, so you'd imagine they'll try and go along with it and work off of that. If Limerick can even break even on the Tipperary kick-out and make sure, as they have up to now, won the majority of their own, I'd give them an edge in that. But again, there'll be goals, I imagine, in this game, because it's in the nature of both teams to kind of go for them.
Well, please God, Limerick will be on the right side of the goal count and the victory. That game throws in at 7:00 this Saturday in Thurles. Best of luck to Limerick, and hopefully we can get to Munster final in 12 years. A huge thank you to Pa, and we'll be